and welcome to XR Today exclusive interview speaking on a BBC supported project to bring AR sign language training to Snapchat's Lens platform. To explore this topic, we are speaking to AR designer and founder of Shenanigans, Shawi. Thank you so much for joining me today, mate.
Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. And before we get too deep into the project and into the project and its goals, etc., could you give us a little bit of a background to Shenanigans? What are you making? What are you doing with AR?
Well, Shenanigans is a creative studio that I started in and sort of end of 2019. So we're just over 5 years old. And we've been doing augmented reality for the longest time, but augmented reality on social media platforms. So that's Snapchat, TikTok, and it used to be Instagram, but they killed their AR software, so we don't do that anymore. But beyond that, we've been doing creative technology and also offer creative technology solutions to clients, to brands who want to use marketing in a unique way and want to use storytelling and narrative building as a part of their marketing campaigns.
Brilliant. And could you speak a little bit more on that experience of working or developing on Snapchat? And you mentioned Instagram there as well, used to work with Instagram. Could you give us your opinion on the validity of Snapchat as a platform for AR and in a couple of directions, one being the smartphone being a great end device for AR, aside from smart glasses and that development, and then sort of Snapchat as that serious tool that now things like AR Spark have perhaps sort of moved to the side. What opportunities have you seen develop on that platform?
I think Meta Spark is how I sort of got into augmented reality. So it will always hold a very special place in my heart because it sort of, in a lot of ways, changed the trajectory of my life and like was able to give me a career as an augmented reality designer, developer, creator. There's so many terms out there for it now. But also kind of got me interested in creative technology as a whole, is the idea of augmented reality and virtual reality and all these terms that I had no idea about prior to um, using Metaspark for that matter. However, over the years, I started using Lens Studio by Snap quite a lot, which is for those of the audience who don't know, it's the software that we use to develop the augmented reality experiences that are then published on Snapchat. Um, I think Lens Studio is by far the most sophisticated augmented reality sort of software that we have at the moment. Um, and I don't just say that because I use it a lot and I work with Snap as well as like with their philanthropy team to teach students how to use Lens Studio and to build augmented reality experiences. But I think as a user, somebody who uses Lens Studio quite a lot, I think it is one of the most powerful softwares. What you can do with it is um, unlike anything that you could do with any other sort of augmented reality software. I mean, I think if your other options would be something like Unity or Unreal, if you want to develop extremely sort of complex augmented reality experiences. But given the sort of way that they have democratized access to augmented reality, I think Snap have really, really paved the way for how other companies should do it as well. And they, in my opinion, sort of leading the game because the sort of experiences that you can create, they have incorporated things like machine learning and artificial intelligence into a simple Snapchat lens. And I want to use the word simple carefully because it's not that simple. It's a very sophisticated piece of technology, but the democratization of that technology is what I think makes them extremely powerful. And they were able to create this like very strong community of creators who are so passionate about everything that they create using Lens Studio. And I think that's something really, really special. So over the years, I've been very fortunate to have been a part of that community, both professionally and personally. And it's been quite a rewarding experience over the years. And I think in terms of what it does, the experiences that we create, and the fact that you can just use a simple, mobile phone, and that's the hardware, it's something that most people already have. So there aren't many barriers to entry. The other great thing about it is that with social AR in particular, you don't have to download an additional app. A lot of the people that are experiencing these augmented reality sort of lenses and filters, they're already on the platforms where these are being published. So it almost removes that additional barrier to entry as well and opens up your audience to millions of people.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm glad you brought up the sort of democratization side there as well. And just finally to touch on that, with the idea of it democratizing it, not just for democratizing AR, excuse me, not just for the users, but then for the businesses, and putting that all in one package, from creation to delivery and usage. How do you feel about that in terms of broader AR adoption? Surely that's leading it, would you say?
I think it is because I think Snapchat's business model is also very interesting. Um, we all think of them as a social media company, but they're a camera first company. That's what they're, if you look at their, if for those, for the people who are interested, if you go and ever like look up what the corporate statement and everything is, they call themselves a camera first company. And it's quite fascinating how they've used AR to really kind of propel themselves into this entirely other levels compared to their competitors. But also the fact that they really empower the creators to build their own businesses, and they give us the tools, and they have a community of engineers and entire teams whose entire job is to support this budding community of creators. And these are creators who I mean, we get rewarded for working on the platform in ways that I think it's quite unusual, that they encourage entrepreneurship, but they also do it in a way where it's not just like, oh, here's a tutorial, here's a bit of documentation. It's things like you get to meet with the engineers. If there's something that you're stuck with, you can contact them and they respond. If you're building a campaign, the first people we would reach out to is their team or like the developers team, and tell them that we're stuck or something isn't working, and they come back to you with solutions. So it's things like they've built an entire ecosystem around it, which I think has really, really helped in for people like me to start entire small creative studios and then do this independently. Um, and it's just been brilliant. The entire journey so far has been brilliant, and I think my experience working with them has also been something that's been truly, truly remarkable, and I feel very privileged to be a part of their community.
Fantastic. That's some really great insight into Snapchat, or Snap as a company. They're doing so much. Sometimes it can be hard to keep up. So that's really useful to hear. But speaking more specifically about this BBC Sign Language project, could you give us a little bit of an insight into how that started, what sparked the idea? Obviously, you've done a lot of marketing campaigns. This is in turn partly a marketing campaign with BBC Two, but there's a little bit more to it. So could you introduce that idea and what sparked it?
Well, this took a very long time. This entire from the moment we had our first conversation to the actual campaign being published. I think I spoke to the producer of this campaign, Louis Barry, who very kindly, I mean, I spoke to him through actually somebody just sent me a message saying, "Oh, I've seen this on my LinkedIn, and maybe you should reach out to them." And I think it was a post by Louis Barry, and I texted him or emailed him and told him about what we do and what we've done previously, and the conversation started from there. But this was supposed to be a different campaign, which never ended up happening for us. And then I just followed up randomly in December around the Christmas period, and we picked up again, and Louis said that we're trying to develop this campaign, and we kind of worked really collaboratively on the ideation of what we should do. We worked on a few ideas. We knew that it had to involve something around British Sign Language, because the brief was that it is going to promote this documentary series with Rose Eiling Ellis, who's um, a big sort of celebrity and as a broadcaster for the BBC as well. And I think she won Strictly Come Dancing. And so this was to promote the show. And because she's part of the deaf community and she's a big advocate for British Sign Language and spreads a lot of awareness around it. So the idea was to use British Sign Language as it was going to be a sort of focal point in the augmented reality experience that we create. But we didn't know what shape it was going to take. So over the next few weeks, we had a lot of back and forth sort of ideation phases. We shared storyboards and concepts and designs of what it could be. And because it's the BBC, I mean, it's a fairly competitive way of doing it as well. It's because it wasn't just us; we were competing against other people, or studios or creators. And then after a few weeks, we found out that we were the ones who were selected based on our storyboard and the concept that we had pitched to them. And then we developed that further. But because me and the team that we have here at Shenanigans, none of us are part of the deaf community, we felt like we needed to bring on a consultant, like somebody from the deaf community to be a part of this project to make it truly authentic, extremely respectful to the community, to have a perspective that we mightn't have as people who are not from that community. And if the lens is going to be about British Sign Language, we need to bring someone all who is an expert in what they do. And so we reached out to this organization called Deaf Umbrella, and they were able to put us in touch with one of their consultants. Her name's Lorraine Robinson. And Lorraine is a remarkable woman who made this entire experience so much more enjoyable for us. It was Lorraine and her interpreter Sally, and they came on board. We had quite a few consultations, and it was small things that we could have never thought about because obviously we're not from the community, from the deaf community. And it was things like when we had pitched the storyboards to the BBC, we hadn't even taken into account the fact that British Sign Language is different for people who are right-handed and people who are left-handed. And so this was something which was pointed out by Lorraine to say, you guys have not thought about this, and this is something which is of utmost importance. Is even before your experience begins, you need to ask the individual if they're right-handed or left-handed. And there were small things like that. She really, really helped us shape the overall aesthetic and the logic of how it was going to uh, pan out for the end user, from things like how even the smallest details about the color and the fact that the illustrations should have a contrasting background so it's more visible to the end user to make it more accessible. And so this entire process has been truly collaborative. It was between us at Shenanigans, Lorraine, Deaf Umbrella, and then the BBC, and it was almost like we were all working collaboratively. And it has been, I think, one of the most brilliant experiences is in my time at Shenanigans. It's because it was a campaign which wasn't just about a marketing or a promotional thing. It was more so about how can we create something that has a life beyond the marketing campaign, and it's actually a tool, a utility tool, because when we published it, um, before we published it, actually, we had Lorraine come in and test out the lens, and you should have just seen how ecstatic she was because she said that there's nothing like this. Even and she's a teacher. She has 30 years of experience, and she's a teacher. She teaches British Sign Language, and she was saying that even though there's charts out there that show you how the hand work, how to finger spell your name and the gestures and all of that, but none of them even were animated. So a lot of the times they don't even have a lot of these resources to do it. And now they have a Snapchat lens that allows them to actually learn how to finger spell their name.
Fantastic. And you called that there a utility or a utility at all. In my notes, I wrote it down as an AR educational experience. So I imagine it's kind of a similar
Yeah.
overlap there. But with your previous experience making more advertisement based content, marketing content, etc., what lessons and what knowledge did you transfer into this AR educational or utility tool? What lessons, what knowledge? I imagine there's a lot of technical factors as well, actually, from the lens. So, like the machine learning you mentioned earlier, and the turnaround. You said it's from December till fairly recently. At
Hmm.
least I've seen it online. So it's a quick turnaround. What knowledge, what lessons, what technical aspects do you bring in from your previous experience to help boost this project?
That's a very good question, actually, because a lot of the commercial projects that we've done before um, usually came with a very strict brief. Sorry, they came with a very strict brief, and it was always about. I mean, the clients or the agency that we would work with would tell us this is exactly how we want it to be. So just make this in augmented reality, and that's it. Um, and then sometimes you're fortunate enough to work on projects where they ask for your feedback, and we got to really like sort of help design the different aspects of it. And we were given a lot of creative freedom. Obviously, there are things that were non-negotiables, but in terms of the aesthetic and how it should work, what the logic is going to be, how are the users sort of onboarded, uh, how do they interact with the different elements on the screen, and then what's the final sort of call to action. There was a lot of freedom that we had, and I think a lot of the credit for this goes to the BBC as well, because we were given that freedom to actually create um, it in a way that was going to be interactive and fun for the final user of the lens. But I think our experience in the past and having worked on different campaigns, when you start doing when you've done this so many times, I think you come in and you know exactly what is going to work and what isn't going to work. Things about where text is placed and how text has to be overlaid and how long it should be on the screen, how not to overwhelm the user. There's lots of these different. Some of them are questions just about user experience and user interface, but then there's a lot of other philosophical questions, and then there are other ethical questions which they mightn't come into your frame of reference immediately. But I think after having done so many of these campaigns, uh, when we went in this one, we knew exactly, like, we had a sort of clear picture of how it was going to pan out, and we were able to use that to really plan things ahead of time and to also put in contingencies in place for any sort of issues that may arise.
Fantastic. And then equally speaking on this kind of something a little bit different for Snapchat and shenanigans in terms of the end product or end application. What were the first reactions from perhaps the developer community, people you know who create on Lens, on the Lens platform? What were their reactions to this social AR, educational utility? What was the reaction to this? Is this something commonplace on the Lens platform?
I think there are quite a lot of developers who are doing some great work, especially when it comes to making experiences that have utility beyond just the lens itself. Um, but the reaction has been absolutely phenomenal. For us, particularly, I think we've never received this many compliments on a project. And the creator community were very kind to us, and everybody kept promoting it and giving us shout outs and kept telling us, how great the project was, which makes us feel amazing as well, because um, it's one thing to get some sort of validation from the audience, but it's a lot more rewarding when it's your peers and people from within the developer community when they come together to congratulate you on projects like that. It is a very supportive community, so it's quite a wholesome thing when it happens. But even beyond that, like the team at the BBC were very happy with it. We just saw today that they're posting TikToks about it and they're promoting it on different channels. But even on Snapchat itself, people are using it now. Every day we can see, the analytics and things, the number of shares and views are going up. So people are using it. I'm excited to see what happens, like how long this stays on for, and maybe even see like how it continues to have a life beyond the campaign as well. But I think we'll have to wait a few months to see what happens with the lens itself.
All right, fantastic. Thanks for that. And just to finally wrap it up, a couple of points on Snapchat as a sort of more broadly in the market. Obviously, AR in terms of wearables and software, the general market is increasing. If you know, you know, but I feel like it's hitting that mainstream point eventually. At least in terms of wearables, it's obviously on everyone's smartphones already. But leading into the second half of the decade, from 2025 to 2030, it's going to get a lot busier. What's your opinion on where the Snapchat ecosystem will, how will that stand in the coming sort of months, years, as more firms get deeper into AR, especially mobile AR pieces like this? Will Snapchat hold a sort of cemented legacy within that and carry on forward?
I think they will because I mean, like I said, I've been very fortunate to work really closely with them over the last few years. And the one thing that I've noticed is that they're dedicating so much of their resources to build it really like a platform for other developers to come on board. And it's almost like that. I think that democratization is such an important part of it. But the reason I also say that I think they're currently like leading the whole AR this space in particular is because uh, as you may know, they've released their spectacles very recently. It's their generation of wearables. And it's not something that's new. They've been doing spectacles for quite some time now. This is, I think, their fifth, if I'm not mistaken, their fifth generation of spectacles. And we were very fortunate to have received a pair to do this campaign. Well, not this campaign, but to kind of work with it as a developer sort of tool. But we've been, I think, in particular with Snap is the fact that because the our sort of mobile phones, if you think about it, we've really gotten to the point where I think we've peaked in terms of design. This is the most that we will ever have. Like you'll probably get a better camera on the back, a better camera on the front. We talk about this a lot at Shenanigans, is how I think this is it with the mobile phone. And the next sort of logical thing for the future is going to be around wearables. And if that is where the future is going to be, then what does it look like? Like, how do we interact with the world when we're wearing it on our faces rather than holding it in our hands? Um, and I think that's a very exciting and interesting space because this previous generation of hardware has created, billion, trillion dollar companies. You have things like Meta and Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram and all these companies wouldn't have existed had it not been for this piece of hardware. Um, and now, as we're moving into this new generation of hardware where it's wearables, it almost puts forward this question as to will we have a new social media in this sort of spatial setting, and what does that look like? And I think Snap is again leading that conversation because, well, they have things like spectacles, and because it's still within a developer community, and there are not many of them. Like, there's not a lot of people in the world right now that have them, but the developers that are using those spectacles, some of the experiences that they're creating are absolutely uh, just mind-boggling because these are things where I think the best way that like a company can really do this is to hand it out to developers and let them figure out how they want to shape the world of the future, and that's what's happening as is right now. So I think even in terms of that sort of next the future proofing of their ideas, I think they're leading the way for a lot of other companies as well, and sort of paving the way as to what that's going to look like in the future.
Brilliant, great. That's really insightful. Thank you for that. Let's wrap it up there. But just for our viewers, what's the best way for people listening, people watching, to stay up to date with what you're doing?
Well, you could probably add us on LinkedIn, or we post a lot about it, our stuff on LinkedIn, on X, on Instagram. It's under Shenanigans or myself, Shawadi Shayan. And yeah, we like our website as well. But I think the social media platform is where we usually talk about our big projects.
Brilliant. Thank you, Shawi. I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for your insight today. It's been really, really useful. For our
Oh,
viewers at home, thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date, subscribe to the YouTube channel or subscribe to the website. Cheers, Shawi.
cheers.